the time in our program for our featured poets. And I want to introduce them one by one because we're going to do round robin. The whole show is going to be continuous. And what you need, Brooksy? I got it. I'll give it to you. I have no further use of it when I'm done. Andy Wilkinson, right here, is an American singer-songwriter. He's getting ready. Of contemporary Western folk music and cowboy poetry, Andy was the keynote speaker at the 33rd National Cowboy Poetry Gathering, and I heard him and I attended that, and he presented a poem for the keynote, which is the first time that had been done. Am I correct? And it was poem and song, just as you're going to have today. And through his poems and songs, he weaves images of people and places, telling the tales of the American West of yesterday and today. His recognitions include 5 National Western Heritage Awards from the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum in 5 different categories. The John Ben Shepherd Jr. Craftsmanship Award from the Texas Historical Foundation, and his induction in the West Texas Walk of Fame. Jerry has loved and recited poetry since she was young. She's a reciter of classical and modern cowboy poetry and can do so for hours. She has an astounding library in her mind, in her brain. She lives on you said you really don't live on the Spider Ranch. Where do you live, Jerry? Hey, just in Prescott. But Gail and Amy are your landlords, though, correct, or no? Yeah, okay. No, never mind. And she's performed many years in Elko, and I've seen her many times. And one of my favorite shows of all time was one that she shared the stage with Andy. And my personal best pal, Shadd Piehl, we met at the airport in Salt Lake and have ridden many times to Elko together on the 3.5-hour drive across the Great Basin, and always stopping at Wendover, and they say now that's where they put the atomic bomb in the plane out there in a Quonset hut out in Wendover, which is right at the juncture of a state line, a time zone, and a mountain chain. And so he grew up in Minot, North Dakota. Minot. He's been, listen to this, he's been a ranch hand, a stockyard bird, a hog-hide shaver, a warehouse lumper, teacher, and rodeo cowboy. And as a saddle bronc rider, he competed for the North Dakota State University in intercollegiate rodeo and was twice the Great Plains region's bronc riding champion. You've got a champion in your midst. And so he lives, I've been to his house, lives in Mandan with Marnie, who is his great wife. She's fabulous. She's better than him, like everybody's wife, right? And has sons Owen, Wyatt, and Ryder, and they are strapping young men. And so, no further ado, please welcome these great poets.
Well, woo-haw, gee-law, hey, Ma, can anybody give me a yee? Oh, let's do it one more time. Yee! Powder River, letter buck, too wide to ride, too fat to truck. Ladies and gentlemen, y'all better hunt your hidey holes. Stand back and get ready to be amazed, for we're about to unwind. I've got a brass-mounted heart and cast iron bowls. Weed, mead, greed, they all put the meat on my bones because I do things the American way, say. You can be anything you want to be, eh? Make it up as you go along, Mac, because where I am is where it's at, and where I'm at, it's Dakota. And Dakota is everywhere, said Long Shot O'Leary in a poem called Letter. Poem, little space out of time, sometimes rhyme. I don't want to rhyme. Make it up, a world of dreams. I've got a poem about cowboy beans later on in the show, because cowboys are showmen who rodeo-o, D-O-O, D-O-O.
Good afternoon. Thanks for being here. Thanks for coming to listen. It just doesn't make any sense if ain't nobody listening. We appreciate you. We truly do. Now, is anyone in here related to Ruby Carson? Well, good. That's a good point. Anyway, I'm going to use one of her poems to start out with, and it's kind of a semi-local tale about a character from the Kissimmee region by the name of Bone Mizell. I'm not getting any. I'm still getting these blank stares out here. Well, I'll be darned. He was a Florida cowboy. This poem was written back in 1939. I actually first heard the story of Bone Mizell in Arizona, which is where I am presently living. And when I found I was going to get to do this, I just couldn't help but think, I really need to do that poem. And I see you out there, bud. Yeah. I might have a helper out in the audience, but I brought a cheat sheet anyway. In Kissimmee, they tell of old M. Bone Mizell and a stranger that died on his hands. He died in dry season, and that was the reason he was buried a while on Bone's lands. He was buried a while on that pine and palm isle in the swamp, beneath the Florida sun by the cracker who nursed him, who loved him and cursed him just before his demise had begun. Now just take the news calmly, he wrote to the family the deceased had left living up north. I can send the remains when there come forth some rains and us Pine Island folk can go forth. So providing you ask it, I'll dig up the casket, which was done when the season brought rain, and the river could float the old flat-bottomed boat, and us Pine Island folk can go forth. Oh gosh, I just screwed this. I am terribly ashamed. So providing you ask it, I'll dig up the casket, which was done when the season brought rain, and the river could float the old flat-bottomed boat, and the dead boy could travel again. When Bone went with the coffin, he smiled much too often. On the boat and en route to the car, at the train he said, "Give me one fare from Kissimmee to Vermont. Ain't this corpse traveling far?" Thus the money was spent that the family had sent, and a friend of Bone said the next day, "So you shipped the lad home?" And Bone said, "No, by gum, 'cause I figured it out all this way. As his kinfolks are strangers to all of us rangers, why not give some dead cracker this ride? Why make all this fuss over some poor old cuss who in life hadn't wallered in pride? So instead of that yank with his money and rank, who had been around and seen lots of fun, I just dug up Bill Red, and I shipped him instead. Hell, old Bill hadn't traveled round none."
Oh, okay. I'm so grateful to Brooksy for having made the first screw up. Because that means I won't do any worse than the second screw up. And there's a possibility of that because I'm going to do, unless you just holler out no, I'm going to do a really new song, one I wrote this right at the beginning of the year. I've only done a few times, so if you see me staring off into the distance, it's my mind trying to dig up the next line. But I have a really dear late friend, a fellow named Max Evans. And for those of you who may not know, Max was born in a little tiny town just southwest of where I live in Lubbock. Max grew up there and in Andrews, Texas, and then he spent the rest of his life in New Mexico. He was a cowpuncher. He was a miner. He was a painter. He was a novelist and a screenwriter. If you ever saw The Rounders, that was Max's film, or The High-Low Country, that was Max's film. And Max was a little short guy. He has this great story. He's a short guy. I don't think he ever lost a fight, though, and he was a really good football player. 3 years at Andrews High School, which is no slouch for high school football, he only dropped one pass. Now that's a record in any day and time. But he always wanted to be a cowpuncher, and he had gotten this little tiny piece of land sort of hemmed in by some other ranches up on Glorieta Mesa in northern New Mexico. And he told the school that he was going to quit school and go up to New Mexico and work cows. And the coach said, well, Max, I'll make you a deal. If you'll play football in the fall, I'll put you on a bus and send you up there for the spring and summer, and then you come back and play some more football. And I'm going to send a box of books with you, and I want you to read them and write me a report on each book, and then you can graduate. And that's what Max did. Now, wouldn't those people in education freak out about that today, the school boards? But Max said, I learned two things. I learned that I love to read, and I learned that I love to write. What a cool story. We had a young man honored earlier, there he is, Tyler, about his writing, and I can't tell you how important that is. Well, Max, he was a tough guy. Later in life, his best friend, he lived next door to him on the beach in California. His best friend was, the crazy director that directed The Wild Bunch, and Sam Peckinpah, who was pretty much a scrapper himself. So Max and Sam Peckinpah, they were good buddies. That gives you an idea of Max. But Max, who is not a religious person in the sense of dogmatic religion, would nevertheless stop in the middle of something, particularly when there got to be a moment where he didn't quite know how to explain things. And he'd look at me and say, Andy, only the great mystery knows that. And I thought, that's about as religious as I ever want to get. High rollers and blue northers, prairie fires and hail and drought, unconscious of our borders, our certainties, our doubts, without hymnals, without psalters, without prayers or psalmistry. They carry out the orders of the greatest mystery. Coyote, Criollo, Chaparral, and Rattlesnake. Blue Grama and Creosote, Blue Grama and Purple Sage. Never mind, there we go. There. Chinook mott's and creosote, nary one needs you or me, for each one holds the answer to the greatest mystery. For the rangeland knows its business, what to do and how it's done. The wisdom of the wilderness is a kingdom that has come without pity or forgiveness for what was or what will be, bearing constant witness to the greatest mystery. The rangeland moves in circles, without angles, without lines, without questions, without searching, without worrying what we'll find, requiring no rehearsals to sing its harmony to the choruses and verses of the greatest mystery. For the rangeland knows its business, what to do and how it's done. The wisdom of the wilderness is a kingdom that has come without pity or forgiveness for what was or what will be, bearing constant witness to the greatest mystery. It bears a constant witness to the greatest mystery. Thank you. Thank you, and thanks to my able assistant here.
All right. Brooksy saves the day again. Sean had an introduction there that was partly true, I think, or mostly true. And I did ride saddle bronc horses for quite a time. One of my mentors was Brad Germanson. I don't know if anybody was a rodeo fan or knows. He was a 4-time world champion, and I was mad for riding broncs and rodeo, and I was also mad for poetry when I was kind of 18, 19, 20. I thought I was a real romantic character, you know, a heartbreaker and a bronc stomper. I had Brad Germanson's brother make me a pair of chaps, and I had a full heart on one side and a broken heart on the other. You know. And I was reading a lot of stuff. I'd found a book by Paul Zarzycki, who's a great cowboy poet, rodeo cowboy poet, in Miles City at the Buck and Horse sale. I was also picking up any poetry I could find in used bookstores, and I'd found a line from Ezra Pound, and the line was, "If your heart fails you, trust not in me." And Ezra Pound had said that that was an inscription off of a medieval sword, and I thought, wow, that's great. So I wrote that on the top of my saddle, on the buck and rolls, the front part of my saddle. And the saddle I rode was a strange saddle for the time, but it was a Salisbury the maker, and it was a 606, which was a fiberglass type saddle. I won a lot of money on that saddle till I left it sitting behind the chutes, and a tractor drove over it and broke it in half. So I'm telling you this because this poem is titled "Sweetheart of the Rodeo." You know, and that's a nod to my Shaps, but also to my father, who's a painter, a visual artist, and he has a Sweetheart of the Rodeo, which he stole from the Byrds in that great album. And his are the bucking horses. For him, the bucking horse is the sweetheart of the rodeo. So this is Sweetheart of the Rodeo. The devices on my Shaps were hearts, one torn in two, the other red and full. A romantic take, I thought, metaphor for rodeo and loves, fits and starts. Back when I could spur the baddest buckers, I wrote on the rolls of my Salisbury 606 rough out cack an inscription. Something from Ezra Pound, the translation from the Latin on a medieval sword. If your heart fails you, trust not in me. Oh, words to live by. To say that you are scared ain't nothing wrong in that, but to flee in the face of chance? Come on, cowboy. Roll 'em. Shake your face and let them have you. Thanks.
Well, gosh, I'm sure glad I've come in so handy today. I just wish I knew how an iPad worked. How do I get to the next page? Oh, there isn't one. Oh, hallelujah.
So Brooksy, you're now an IT person.
Always wanted another job. All right, I got to get settled down here. This is fun, but not when you mess up, darn it. We'll see if we can get through one. When I first started getting involved in the cowboy poetry deals, I heard this story pretty early on, and I thought it was one of the prettiest stories I ever heard. It's the sweetest love story I can tell you. It's the only one I know, and well, it is written by a Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle cowboy saddle maker by the name of J.W. Beeson. It's based on a true story. It's called Rosie's Eagle. Rosie was a widow. She lived up north of town. If you cross Wolf Creek about a mile and you circle back around, you'll find a big old ranch house built of sandstone, rock, sweat. Rosie raised her family there. Her grandson lives there yet. Now, I become acquainted with that grand old pioneer when I was just a youngster, nearly in my 14th year. I'd go out and feed her cattle while Rosie'd go and stay and visit with her children who had grown and moved away. One day when I was out feeding, I saw a wondrous sight. A big old golden eagle just soaring like a kite. So high above the wagon he'd circle all around like he was on a search for something down here on the ground. I watched him for a minute, hanging silent in the sky, but the silence soon was broken by the echo of his cry, and he screamed his disapproval of the place I'd chose to rest. Then I spotted the remainder of what once had been a nest. The nest was old and brittle, the aftermath of age, and it lay beside a marker nearly covered by the sage. Well, my youthful curiosity had grabbed me by the shirt. I knew I had work to do, but 5 minutes wouldn't hurt. So I got down off the wagon and kicked the tumbleweeds away, revealing an inscription in that stone of granite gray. It said, "Return to me in springtime with love forever new, and dance with me upon the wind the way the eagles do." Well, I stood there kind of puzzled, trying hard to figure out just what these words engraved in stone were really all about. So when Rose returned from visiting, I told her what I'd seen and how when I got near that stone, that bird would start to scream. With her eyes reflecting memories, and through the traces of a tear, she took me by the hand and said, "There's something you should hear. I'll tell you of a story that up till now's been known by only me and God above about the eagle and the stone. These Caliche hills that weave their way through what once was Box T Range were once the home of eagles that nested on the plains. And the Indians had a legend they believe is true, that for every man that lived out here, an eagle lived here too. And if the eagles nested when a man would take a wife, then the spirits of the lovers claimed the nesting ground for life. And that was how it happened, as if decreed by fate. The day that I become a bride, the eagle took a mate. And as he built a nest for her of willow branch and silt, so I was born across the threshold of a ranch house not yet built. And so we spent our wedding night beneath the prairie moon in a Studebaker wagon in the early part of June. And as he held me in his arms and pledged to me his love, he said, "If ever we should part, I swear by God above in springtime I'll return to you as when our love began, and with the eagles we will go and dance upon the wind." The year my husband passed away, the ladybird was killed. They're buried side by side beneath that stone upon the hill. And every year in early June, I watch the morning sun, and I watch the morning sky, and I listen for the sound of wings like angels passing by. And when I see that old eagle, my heart begins to glow, and I think about a promise made so many years ago. The words are carved in granite. Our love will never end. And my heart goes up to meet him, and we dance upon the wind. Thank you.
Brooksy just saved me on the. Gosh. Can you do my windows too? I had a thing all worked out. I was going to do some sonnets. I may save them and do them later, but after she did that beautiful love poem, I thought I would do a song about what is more likely love. So it's not a true story. although I guess somewhere it could be. I was driving down the road one hot day in Lubbock County, south of town, headed out to my dad's farm way out southwest. And my son was with me. He was a little boy, he's 5. And it was, if you've ever been out in West Texas or the desert, anywhere when it's hot in the summer, you get dust devils, whirlwinds. And those things can get pretty big. In fact, we had one time at the farm that we lived on when I was a little kid that picked up a cotton trailer and threw it over. That's almost a tornado, But this one, what more typically happens is that they funnel up and they carry up stuff, and then it gets up so high, and unless there's a lot more weather to keep it going, there's this sort of drifting down and falling out. And there was one of those way off in the distance. We're driving along, and it had all the stuff. It was a real dark whirlwind. It was a clear day, very hot, cloudless. And where the thing was falling apart, the stuff was just floating down. And my son looked up and said, "Dad, that looks like a dust devil angel." And I said, hand me my notebook. And so I made this up. Hot day and a little bit dirty. Dottie's down at the y'all come in. Hopping tables when the wind comes swirling. Door open, the stranger blew in. He had a tattoo of a heart and a dagger, dripping blood over born to lose. Dottie smiled like a TV preacher, red lips and eyeshadows of blue. Dottie stared like a kid at a movie. The stranger's smile was cold and thin. He could see when a heart looked lonely, and she could see the best in the worst of men. Dust devil and a jukebox angel, nightmare and a hopeless dream. Heart for wishing and an eye for danger, heavy sigh and a barely muffled scream. He dropped a pocket full of change in the jukebox, wiped the dirt from his face and neck, pulled a pistol from his double-stitched boot tops, said, "Give me money and don't make no mistakes." A little scared, but a little more hungry, Dottie rang the register drawer, squeezed his hand when she handed him the money, untied her apron and dropped it on the floor. Dottie leaned on a Formica table. What she's thinking, we still don't know. But she was willing and he was able. They went to kissing and fumbling with their clothes. Dust devil and a jukebox angel, nightmare and a hopeless dream. Heart for wishing and a heart for danger, heavy sigh and a barely muffled scream. They never found him, but they found her pickup. Doors open, the radio on. They found the money from the cafe stick-up. They found their clothes, but they never found the gun. And there are days when the sun is a-blazing and the sky is a wild-ass blue. You can see on the far horizon a dust devil that looks like an angel too. Dust devil and a jukebox angel, nightmare and a hopeless dream. Heart for wishing and an eye for danger, heavy sigh and a barely muffled scream. A heart and a scream. A heart and a scream. Thank you.
Thought I'd give him a chance to leave. So I was telling you my father is a visual artist, a painter, and I love art that tells stories or has some narrative to it. So I grew up around that. I know a lot of artists. Never been able to really hold any kind of pencil or brush in my hand, worth a darn, but really admire it. And I was with a painter friend of mine who does a lot of plein air painting and landscape stuff. And we were at a show and there was a artist from Montana and he had a oil painting of what looked like a goat, but like a unicorn goat. It was a really strange animal. And this goat was raised up and had its front legs up on the shoulders of a guy who looked a lot like George Armstrong Custer. And the title of it was The General and the Unicorn. And I thought, oh God, and it had like $3,400 on it or something, and I don't have any money. And I was telling this painter friend of mine, boy, I'd love to have that painting. And he goes, well, give me $600 and I'll paint it for you. But I was taken with that title, The General and the Unicorn, and I live in Mandan, which is where Fort Abraham Lincoln is and where Custer set off and never returned, and a lot of history there. And so I started working on this poem in grad school, and Andy, you probably don't want to do a whole lot of rhyming couplets in grad school if you want to get that MFA. But that's what this is. It's titled Over the Hills Like Horses, and it references that general and the unicorn kind of at the end, and some of the landscape that I live in and grow up in, Deadwood. So, over the hills like horses. Trust in your star. That's Custer's luck. He knew that things wouldn't run amok. Only hindsight misconstrues. So you lived the day you wrote rude. While in Dakota he still had his hair. Montana will eat you. Have you been to Crow Fair? Like down in Deadwood there lived Wild Bill, where aces and eights only pays you Boot Hill. What's in the story told by fools? It's all found gold and lost jewels. Mild depression is the thing, a dirge is just a song to sing, like some days it's beans and others it's steak. Lonely but happy, a little heartache will make you stronger. Just ask old granddad. Is better longer? The general and the unicorn, those dead upon the hill, we cannot hear their voices, but their choices haunt us still. Life rides hard and packs along all opposing forces. Cold camps the days and lopes away over the hills like horses.
Well, golly, it worked out so well last time I tried to read one. I'll give her another whack. That ain't gonna work either. Yeah.
Can I hold it for you?
I'd love it if you did. I've been staying at Sean and Sharon Sexton's house, and it's been so delightful. I've just been reveling in their artwork and the artistry that surrounds them in their home. And the other night when we got in from the airport and get to the house finally after the show and whatnot, and it was about midnight. We get in, and I walk in, and I see these wonderful portraits that Sean has done of mutual acquaintances of ours. And one in particular struck me. The man's one of my heroes. His name is Wes Quinlan. If you've ever been down in southern Colorado, it's not much like what you think of as Colorado with the mountains and the snow. I mean, this is dry land down there. It's a hard go in that country, and that's how he grew up, just, living close to the bone, no matter what you went after. This one of his poems he called Next Year, People. The preacher picked us out of a stream of stock show enthusiasts walking toward the entrance gates on the icy sidewalks. He approached, spraying spittle, pointed with a grimy hand, and shouted loudly, "Are you a person of faith? Do you believe, madam?" Uh-oh, I thought. Nobody, but nobody shouts at Grandma. Later, over ice cream, she said, "I've been thinking about that sidewalk preacher and what he said. I should have stopped and told him of our faith. It is pure faith to turn bulls in with cows and believe that come spring, there will be rambunctious, white-faced calves bucking and bawling and butting heads. When we bury tiny, fragile seed, a quarter-inch deep in dry soil, we believe a miracle of great lushness will happen to feed our livestock. Is that not faith? When hard times come, we hang on like leeches and believe that next year it won't hail out our wheat or rain on the alfalfa windrows. Next year, all the cows will twin and will be able to pay the bank. Oh yes, I should have told him. We believe and have great faith because we are next year people. Wes Quinlan.
So every time I think I'm going to do something, Brooksy does something and changes it, but I already got this up, so I'll do one about next year people later. How many of you in here are next year people? Anybody that's farming or ranching or having anything to do with agriculture, maybe anything to do with anything, should be a next year person. But Shadd talked about his father, the artist, and a really fine artist. And Brooksy talked about Sean, our friend, host, and organizer, a really fine artist. So I thought I'd do these, some sonnets I wrote for Willie Matthews. I don't know if you know Willie Matthews, William Matthews. He is a spectacular Western artist. Started off as an illustrator. His forte are watercolors, but he does a lot of other media. And in the before time, before COVID, he got a really great chance to do some big murals over the entrances to the brand new Dickies Sports Arena in Fort Worth. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but this is like Star Trek meets a rodeo arena. It's phenomenal. It's brand new. It has a place where all the big trucks drive down under it and unload the cattle. It's amazing. It has parking. A lot of old rodeo arenas are built in places where it's pretty hard to park and still return to find your car there. But so I got it. Willie called up and said, "I've got this great gig. Would you come help?" And I said, "Help what?" And he said, I'm from Colorado. I'm not from Texas. I paint cowboys, and I want you to sort of come help us think through this idea of the images." And I thought, what a great idea, what a great opportunity. So I wrote 4 sonnets, one for each of the gates, each of the portals in, and they happened to line up with the cardinal points. So here are Fort Worth sonnets. And the first one for the East Gate is called The Temple. Before the people came into this land, these prairies wore a balance all their own. Neath constant sun, neath waxing, waning moon, neath planets wandering across through steady stars and galaxies, all the universe across. This was a country built of moving storms, of wind and wildfire, thundercloud and rain, of wide horizons fighting back the sky, of tempests born of opposites, each one in complement with every other one. A temple where the buffalo and wolf, with verse and incantation, sang and prayed contested arguments of which is first and last and ever ending in a draw. For the South Gate, you came to ride. Before the Spanish brought us back our horse, brought home, brought back to where it had been born, we crawled the earth no different than our beasts, poor masters with dominion over naught. Until that magic moment, mounted up atop the winds made live in Mustang flesh, then, only then, we realized that call of snort and scream and hoofbeat was a dare to tamers from the untamed. Ride with me. My equal, not my master, ride with me. My partner, not my better, ride with me across this continent, from far, from wide. We'll rise above the common and the dull the moment when you know you came to ride. For the West Gate, a moving empire. The longhorn cow is not a man-made thing. Criollo cattle, Andalusian born and bred to drought and scarcity, when loosed upon the sweet and rich mesquite grass of these plains, took root in our horizons, grew their horns to fit our wide and open spaces, grew resourceful on our ranges, south to north, grew smart and mean and practical until they grew to be a new and useful breed, as much a myth as a reality, as much a threat as opportunity, as little pedigreed as mutt or cur, but suited perfectly to cattle drives, a moving empire born to build this place. And for the North Gate, the cowboy tribe, we are but two upon the open plains, just you and I. The oldest story told, the saga of companionship, of work that takes more hands than two, that takes the art of moving horseback, stormy nights behind, clear days ahead. We all believe in this. So what if you don't come from here? So what if you don't look like me or me like you? So what if we are born to different tongues and different clothes and different stars? Our hearts are both the same. There is no woman, man, or child who isn't cowboy in their soul, who doesn't long to let up on the reins and ride together with the cowboy tribe.
I hauled this thing on the plane, so I guess I might as well use it at least once, probably. Ma'am, I love your hat. I've been sitting here admiring that. Can you guys see that back there? Yours back there also with the dog with the dog. I love that. That's a great looking lid also. So I started writing cowboy poetry and started applying to go to things like Elko, the National Cowboy Poetry, and other places. And you meet a lot of musicians and sit around and listen to them jam, and it's great, you know. And I think it's kind of like rap stars and NBA basketball players. Every NBA basketball player wants to be a rapper, and every rapper wants to be an NBA basketball player. I think that every poet wants to be a musician, and every musician wants to be a poet, you know. And so I hooked up with some musicians, and we started a little jug band. I actually played a jug, and they had to play homemade instruments, and we called ourselves Frog Point Landing because I lived in Fargo, North Dakota, along the Red River, and that was one of the towns along there. And I would bring lyrics and I'd bring songs to these guys, and finally my guitar player just got disgusted with it. He said, you know, go buy a cheap guitar, I'll teach you 3 chords, and you can write your own damn songs. So this is titled Pretty Wolfie, and if you're a wolf in the cowboy world, you're taking all the money. You're wolfy, you're one of the wolves of the world. And my friend Paul Zarzycki, who I've mentioned, he is a poet, but he's starting to write lyrics more and more, and he says, I know it's a song if it rhymes, and if it doesn't rhyme, it's a poem. And this started out as a poem, but the line that I had was, it looked like a blue 72 Malibu blew into the Miles City grounds. That's way too many rhymes to put into a poem, to start anyway. And so Miles City grounds is the Miles City Buck and Horse Sale in Miles City, Montana. World famous, will be held here in another week or so, like it always is. Looked like a blue 72 Malibu blew into the Mile City grounds, and he stepped out in fancy red-topped bronc riding bluchers, starch creased, panhandle slim, and he kicked back that 20X Stetson silver belly pulled down them aviator shades, and he looked pretty wolfy. He was talking wolfy. Had come all the way from Coos Bay. I've been topping them bad ones, boys. Here there's a pitching going on. What's this broomtail I got drawn? He was out lone wolfing, a long way alone. Wanted to take her money with him home. Yeah, he looked pretty wolfy. He was talking wolfy. Had come all the way from Coos Bay. Yeah, he thought he was wolfy. I guess he rode pretty wolfy. I took his money anyway. I was a local hero, a county fair cowboy who had paid his fees, climbed aboard. You see, them ponies don't care who you are, where you come from, what buckle's hanging from your belt. You know, I felt pretty wolfy. I was talking wolfy, taking their money with me home. Thought I was wolfy. Those days I rode pretty wolfy. Them days, they're dead and gone. Of a local hero, a county fair cowboy who has paid his fees and climbed aboard. Hey, thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you, Sean.
I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do. Don't disturb me. You might like her hat. I love his T-shirt. That's an Andy Hedges T-shirt right there. I looked up and saw the artwork, and I said, by golly, I hope some of you all, what was that, 3 years ago, got to see Joel and Andy Hedges when they were there? Cool, yeah. Old friend right there, by God. Now this poem, now I'm hoping it's an old friend too. I've never seen it in print. I don't have a copy of it. It's been an awful long time since I tried to conjure it up, but somebody went and mentioned stars and the cardinal points, and it kind of brought this story to mind, so we're going to see what happens. Not a cowboy poem per se, written by a feller named Arthur Gitterman. And I may be wrong on the pronunciation of his name. I honestly don't know. He was an Austrian immigrant, immigrated with his parents to the United States as a young man, spent his life pretty much, up and down the East Coast, in New York primarily. He was one of the founders, one of the co-founders of the Poetry Society of America. Years back. He was also a theater critic. He wrote his reviews in rhyme. The man wrote literally thousands of poems. But he was fond of traveling out to the desert Southwest. And he got to know some of the Navajo, and he was fascinated with the culture, and he wrote this story that just tickled Dickens out of me the first time I heard it. We all learn about the constellation when we're kids, and we know the Greek and Roman names of the constellations. But every culture on Earth has different pictures up there, and different names, and different stories. And he called this story The Star Planners. Them stars. How often I've laid on the prairie and watched them go sweeping around. My pony dozing beside me, and nary a breeze nor a whisper of sound. Oh, I've learned the main bunch of the heavenly ranchers. There's Jupiter and Venus and Mars. Religion? Oh, he don't know its primary branches who ain't been alone with the stars. Some clusters are branded. There's the eagle, the serpent, the bear, the horns of the bull and the belt of Orion, and Cassio, what's her name's chair? But lots of them's mavericks, just roaming the ranges, untamed by the herds of the skies, no part of the big panorama that changes from winter to summer. And why? Well, maybe it's gospel, and maybe he sold me, but here's the whole story, at least, that old Chief Katola, the Navajo, told me the night of the corn planting feast. When all of the mountains were set in their stations and threaded with canyons and rills, the star worlds, the last of the mighty creations, were laying in heaps on the hills, in piles of gold and silver and copper, all polished and shining and new, poured out on the ground like grain from a hopper, awaiting their place in the blue. First came the bear from the mountains, from his cave facing north in the scars, and he lifted his paws to the heavenly spaces, and he painted his picture in stars. Then, over the peaks of the Western Dominion, the eagle, battling the storm, flew up through the heavens with star-dusted pinions and laid out the lines of his form. Then, that the tribes and the nations should wonder, buffalo leaped into the sky. That shag-headed bison whose bellow is thunder emblazoned his image on high. But then come Coyote, so crafty and clever, a scalawag all the way through, that yap-throated varmint who never is happy with things that other folks do. Says he, these stars were intended to brighten the outermost reaches of night, and you go and use them to heighten your glory in pictures. Well, I didn't write. I'll show you how stars should be planted. And he bailed in the glittering piles, and he kicked and he danced, he gambled and ranted, and he scattered them for millions of miles. So that's why they glimmer at 6s and 7s, stampeded all over the vault, a lasting disgrace to the orderly heavens, and it's all that Coyote chap's fault. Maybe it's gospel, and maybe he sold me. But there's the whole story, at least, that old Chief Katola, the Navajo, told me the night of the corn planting feast.
How are we doing on time? Great. This is a great gathering. We've had a lot of fun. We got to go to a great haiku writing workshop. We We had a great performance last night, a lot of fun, and this is great times, and we're doing things tomorrow. We're having a jazz vesper tomorrow evening. That might get me back to church. I don't know. And we're going to do another writing workshop tomorrow morning, so it's great. And it reminds me of a thing that all of us, Sean and Brooksy and Shadd and I have done over the years, and that's the Cowboy Poetry Gathering in Elko, Nevada. It's the first one of its kind, of that kind. 1985, I think, was the year. And all these cowpunch poets came out of hiding and realized there were other people just like them it was a coming out of a different sort. And they discovered there were other people who were riding around and hanging out and doing poems in secret, making sure their parents didn't know they did poetry. Maybe making sure their colleagues didn't know it either. But what grew out of it was this wonderful family, and there are certain traditions sort of developed. One was that the Sunday after the gathering, we'd all go over to Meg Glazer's house, just outside of Elko, a suburb by Nevada standards. It was about an hour away, but it was on the way back to Salt Lake. So all of us who were headed out driving, it was great to stop and go by and visit. So this is a poem that I wrote, not for Meg, but for her father and her mother. And it's called The Little Talk, for Art Glazer. And Sundays after the Elko gathering. Today the sky is middle winter blue, the sun snow white, the snow grown gravel gray. The screen door opens, in comes two before the car is parked halfway. He's resting now, she says, stopped at the walk. We hugged and stand out in the slush and talk the little talk. The talk that's talked when silence says too much. It's warm for February. Yes, it's nice. And how's your wife? She's fine. She's fine. We trade small gossip. Who have you seen? And what's the price of beeves? And how much hay was made? Till in the lull her eyes grow wet, while muddy snow melts clean and clear, and winter begs that we forget. We came to dinner last time here, passed whiskey round and one guitar, then laid up dozing on the couch before the blinking TV fire, conserving spunks so as we could slouch along the table once more, slow, for one last coffee, one last pie. Remember, it was late, but even so, it took all afternoon to say goodbye. Today we laugh but get it wrong. She looks away, a leaf dried up and curled, so we do not tarry long, but with a little talk, we leave the world.
Here, I'll just take this.
Good.
Okay. Let me turn this off. Thank you so much. You've been a wonderful audience. My goodness, so cooperative and attentive. Holy cow, how do you explain that? Only with great poets. And let's give them a great warm round. So we've got some, let's see here. Definitely need to visit the raffle tables. We're gonna draw them sometime in the vicinity of 6:15 or so, 6:30. And so if you want to be in on it, don't hesitate to get some more of those tickets. And I hope you don't do too much of that, because I'm kind of hoping to win a few of them. You know, I'm in on the ground floor. That may or may not be good. You always wonder. The one who draws, please dig deep. We've got a barbecue dinner out on the terrace awaiting you, and we've got wonderful beverages, and we have beer from Sailfish Brewery, and we also have cheap-ass cowboy beer too, which is, one time I drew a label for an Imperial Milk Stout from Cigar City, and we threw a party, and they gave $10,000 to the Cattlemen's Association, and we had a bunch of cowboys come, and we had a party at a restaurant, and they afterward they said, the guys I invited, Mr. Sexton, we sure do like your label, but that's some sorry-ass beer. And I said, you guys are crazy, that's great beer. But anyway, we have that for you who would say that. Something like Michelob Ultra and Butt Wiper, and you know. Anyway, yeah, good thing Southern Eagle Distributing is not one of our sponsors this year, so I didn't just run them down. But please look at those banners, at the people who come, the organizations, the local, you know, Farm Bureau. The Vero Beach Book Center is selling books out there, and CDs and publications, and here come the boss. Here come the boss. Bail me out of here.
Okay.
I'm doing what you should be doing.
Okay. Thank you all. I'm sure he's already reminded you. We have 17 raffle items. We're going to start pulling numbers at 5:45. So it'll go over a little period of time. So, but there is time for you to buy more of those. And the dinner is, I think, ready to roll. So I think that's it.
That's it.
Thank you all for supporting.
Did I say everything?
Hopefully. Yeah, thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to our poets. All right. Food's on. Let me go check.
Don't hesitate to buy some of those recordings and books and publications, and have these guys sign them for you, which they'll gladly do.